All right, what's up? What's good? What's happening? What it do, baby? You are tuned in to another edition of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. It's your boy Xavier, aka X, aka Zay, joined by my brother from another. We are here for the 40th time. It is episode 40, KB. How we feeling?
I ain't even gonna lie. I didn't realize it was 40 at first, but definitely a blessing to be here. Like I said, we talked about this for a long time. I didn't even realize, like I said, that it was 40. But then again, I'm gonna say the same thing when we get to 50 and 100 and so on and so forth. So just definitely a blessing. Glad to be able to, continue doing this thing that we talked about for so long. So just more so excited about everything.
Here's the good news about 50, God willing that we get there. We'll be into the NFL season or headed towards that point by the time we get there, because that'll be 10 weeks from now.
For sure, for sure.
Well, we do got a jam-packed show in this episode, though. The NBA just completely took over this week, and it finally happened. There was a lot that happened this week. We're going to break most of it, if not all of it, down here in part one. We also are going to talk about the draft in part two. We got Lawrence Vaughn in the building coming to join us to talk the draft. But here in part one, it finally happened, y'all. We've been talking about, can it just happen? Can they please just get it over with? Giannis finally got traded, KB. It's like we can all breathe a sigh of relief now that it's over. Giannis Antetokounmpo is going from the Milwaukee Bucks to the Miami Heat. He is leaving the cold winters of the Midwest to head to the sunshine of South Beach. Your initial thoughts?
Uh, Glad it's over. I mean, this saga been going on for a couple of years now. I think we all were just pretty much tired of just the kind of like pump faking that was going on both sides, whether that was from his camp, whether that was from the Bucks, whether that was from other teams that were interested. I think that we're just, all relieved as like, just basketball fans that it's finally over. He can start over somewhere new instead of the, constant I'm happy but not really happy. I want to be here but not really because even reports came out that he wanted to be, like he loves living in Milwaukee, but he doesn't want to play for the Bucks. And I think once that relationship soured, it was pretty much over because honestly, if you look at his tenure outside of the 2021 championship, they haven't done much to capitalize on his prime years. And then once the injuries started to pile up, then you started to see that he started to regress a little bit. Even though he's still an amazing player, but the injuries started to pile up. The older he's gotten, the more injuries that have piled up. They haven't had the postseason success that they once had. That championship team that was from 2021 is no longer a part of the Milwaukee Bucks organization altogether. He was the last remaining member, and now he's gone. So now it's a completely new era, new regime going on in Milwaukee. So happy that he got to go to one of the destinations that he picked out, but it did come at a very steep cost.
Yes, it did. Because Giannis is not the only person that's going to Miami. Bobby Portis is going there too. I think that's a great move. But here's what the Miami Heat had to give up: Tyler Hero, Khalil Ware, Jaime Jaquez, Kasparis Jakinsuonis. I really apologize if I just butchered his name up. I tried my best to put my syllables together right there to pronounce that. 3 first-round picks that included this year's number 13 pick, 1 pick swap, and 1 second-round pick. That's a hell of a haul.
Yeah, for me, like I kind of feel like this is no different than the situation that he was just in. I mean, yeah, you could say it talent wise that it was a little bit better, but they had to gut so much of that team just to get him over to Miami, and now he comes into a situation where you still don't know about the Norman Powell situation. You no longer have that 6 man off the bench and Jaime Jaquez Jr. You have a real rim protector and Bam, but I'm more worried about their spacing. I know a lot of people were saying that they shot the ball fine between Andrew Wiggins, Davion Mitchell, and Norman Powell, but at the same time, it is something to be concerned with as far as their spacing with Giannis jumping into the fold now, who's never been an effective 3-point shooter.
Okay, I just want to correctly give Mr. Kasparis his name pronunciation. It is Kasparis Kuchonis. So Kasparis Kachonis, ladies and gentlemen. And again, to him, I apologize for initially butchering that up.
Yeah, man. I think that when you look at everything that, went on during during this whole process, I look at it like the Bucks were trying to, get as much as they can, which is why I felt like they turned down the Boston Celtics deal, which was, which is
But
something we could probably get to.
let me ask you that though, because I didn't find that in the least bit surprising. The Milwaukee Bucks have been telling us for 3 years that if they were to ever trade Giannis anywhere, they are going to try to clear the cavern, that they're going to try to clear the cupboard bare. They were literally going to try to take everything that they could from that team in exchange for him. They've been
And
telling us for 3 years what they were going to do.
And what they also were putting out to teams, we don't care if you have to rebuild your squad. We don't care if you have to reset your roster after this. You want something that we have. So now that we have the leverage, we can keep them. That was always the thing. They knew they wanted to trade them, but they knew that the other teams didn't have the leverage that they had also to, what I'm saying, like turn those deals down. Like they were telling opposing GMs, like, that's not our problem if you have to reset your roster. If you want a top 5 player in the league, then you're going to have to make that deal. And so we saw Riley make I think this is something that Pat Riley also owed to Miami fans after missing out on so many key free agents over the years. I think there was kind of just like, finally, if you're a Miami Heat fan, you know that it's just like one of those things like, we missed out on KD, not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. You missed out on a bunch of key free agents during the Pat Riley era, and you can look at it like those could have been those free agents could have helped bring a championship back to Miami. And so I think this was kind of like, here, y'all, I'm trying, I'm working, I did something for y'all, but it came at an extreme cost because before I hand it back to you, X, I don't really see this, unless I see some more moves being made, this does not put them anywhere over the top because I still don't look at them in that. I look at them in that middle area of the Eastern Conference. Could be towards the low top end of the Eastern Conference, but I look at them in that low 5 range because I don't think that they're better than Detroit. I don't think that they're better than New York for sure. I don't think they're better than Boston. I don't think that they can. And I'm gonna be honest. The only thing that could stop Boston right now is if the chemistry is somewhat coming into play, like with the whole Jaylen Brown stuff going on, then you look at it because I think that they got something to prove just because of the way they went out this year, getting, having that 3-1 collapse. I think that they're going to have something to prove. I think Jaylen Brown's going to have a lot to prove this year as well. So I'm not going to put them above Boston yet just because of depth. If they didn't have to give up so much in that deal, maybe I would have been like possibly. But the depth, that's it's too big for me to just say that they're better than Boston today. I can't go that far.
I understand you saying that, but I'm putting an asterisk on the Boston Celtics right now because there's so many different things that we're seeing out of there right now when it comes to the Jaylen Brown news. You got Brad Stevens going in front of the podium saying that all is well here. This is our team. There's open dialogue between me and Jaylen about any and everything. We have a great relationship. And then 5 hours later, you keep hearing things about the Boston Celtics are listening to trade offers for Jaylen Brown. So I got a big asterisk by them right now. Also, you talk about depth. I agree with you on that. But depth is the reason the Boston Celtics don't have Giannis Antetokounmpo right now, if you ask me. I know that there was a different report that came out saying that Jimmy Haslam played a big role, the owner of the Bucks, and them not going with the Celtics deal for Jaylen Brown because he didn't want to deal with the potential of Jaylen Brown not wanting to be in Milwaukee long term. Having recently dealt with, he's also the owner of the Cleveland Browns, if folks didn't know this, dealing with trading Myles Garrett, trading Giannis Antetokounmpo, saying both superstars wanted out of those situations. We understand that. I more so lean towards the report, KB, that talked about the Boston Celtics only wanting to trade Jaylen Brown and 2 first-round picks and not include 2 to 3 other role players who, when it really mattered in Game 7 in the first round, even though Jason Tatum couldn't go, those players were out there on the court and they couldn't give you anything. And I honestly don't know what they're going to be giving to this team long term. And that's the reason that you didn't go get an in your prime top 5 player who could come in there with Jason Tatum as long as they're both able to stay healthy and potentially make some noise and maybe even bring another championship to Boston next season. So I trust me, I agree with you on the depth thing when it comes to Miami, but you got to give up something in order to get something.
That's true. Like that's why I'm not gonna say like they're not gonna be somewhere because the East is gonna be more competitive next year. Well, next season going into it, Halliburton's coming back. You look at some of these teams like Washington is going to be much improved. I got a feeling. I just have a strange feeling that they're going to be better than what a lot of people will get. I think he's ready to go right now. I believe in the young talent that they have. Trey got his money, so that's locked up. Will AD still be on the team? I'm still curious about that if he's going to be a part of their plans going forward. But right now, they're building a good little squad out there. Like I said, we seen Toronto be competitive at least in the regular season. Orlando, I want to see what they can do next year. Like it's going to be a pretty competitive, Eastern Conference next year. And I think that's why I say I have them in that 5 range because I think that they're better than possibly Cleveland for the simple fact that I don't think that Cleveland was as good as they were this year. I mean, I think that they, outperformed. I think that with James Harden on the contract that he's on, it's very limited on what they can do. Even when it came to them possibly putting their name into the hat for Jaylen Brown. They've discussed a Donovan Mitchell for Jaylen Brown trade as well. So, I look at it like I don't know what's going on in that situation, but I don't think that they're that much better than if they were better. I don't think they're that much better than the Miami Heat. If you want to say because of chemistry, possibly, but after what I saw against New York in the playoffs, I have doubts about them altogether.
Yeah, but you mentioned the Washington Wizards potentially being in the mix. So they were a 17-win team this year. Obviously, there were a lot of injuries that took place there this year, different things like that. But they were a 17-win team this year. I think at best, probably a 30-win team next season. I look at that situation and I think that that's more so a team to watch for 2028. I don't think they're going to be on the watch for the 26-27 season.
I think they could at least contend for a low end play in spot, like maybe that 9th or 10th seed, just because I do feel like with their situation is going to come into health. If they can keep that starting 5 healthy, I think that they can make a run for a 9th or 10th seed, and that's all going to also come down to how well. I know you've also talked about it, how well AJ gels with Trey. That was a big thing as far as like, is that a good match for the type of player that AJ needs to grow into, and what Trey already is, a ball dominant point guard. So I look at it like it could work, but I gotta see it first. I gotta see how they play off of each other. Same way with Anthony Davis. I think that Anthony Davis will help Alex Sarr's game out a lot, also because he doesn't have to worry about playing that traditional power center role. He can play his power forward role and then just kind of roam a little bit. So I think that they'll help each other out. I think it's a good mix of youth and veteran leadership on the team. So that's the reason why I'm okay with saying that they could be contending for a playing spot. I'm not going ready to put them in the playoff picture yet because I do think that they're another year away, possibly even getting another top 10 pick to go along with the guys they already have, the youth movement they already have going. So that's something I'm looking forward to see. But I'm also looking forward to see if Halliburton can get the Pacers back on track with what they were missing this year with him being out.
So the Miami Heat were the number 10 team in the Eastern Conference this year. That represents the final play-in spot. They won 43 games. I'm sorry, I just don't see 43 games in terms of 43 wins and the potential of the Washington Wizards for next season. They could surprise everybody and get to that level. I think they will have to win somewhere between 37 to 42 games to be in contention for that. And I just don't think that they're ready for that just yet. I think they are more so a 2028 team to watch. But again, we could be wrong on this. But in terms of Giannis, him and Bam, that is a front court duo I'm very interested in watching. because defensively, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. I think that they got it right when they were looking at those are if those are your two anchors on defense, then you got it. And then Davion Mitchell, he's no slouch at the point guard position with his on-ball defense, playing passing lanes. We've seen what he can do. So as far as like having three legit defenders on the court, and then Andrew Wiggins as well being so you have
Bobby
five legit because
Bobby
yeah, Norman
Portis.
Powell. You say who?
Bobby Portis.
I keep see, and I keep forgetting about Bobby Portis, but Bobby Portis was almost like a sweetener in the deal because of the fact that he's ready to get in. You can insert him off the bench, you can start him, and he's good to go right away. And we've seen Bobby Portis be, a key player on the championship team. So, and on offense and defense. So I think that Bobby Portis is going to play a big role in this team. Now, like I said, another reason why I said I'm concerned about what to make of them yet is because of the Norman Powell signing that's still looming in the air. If they sign him, then I kind of get more of an idea of what they will look like.
I think
But
they will. I
I
think
think
they
they
will
will.
because he's a veteran player at this point. And
Yeah,
he's probably not trying to necessarily play for the most money that he can get. Norman Powell's probably just trying to play for what probably would be the best winning situation. And I don't know if he can go to any other better situation and get significantly more financially than what the Miami Heat may be able to offer him.
that's true. I think that they will get the deal done. I think the number is where I'm like kind of like, okay, how much are y'all willing to pay Norman Powell? Because Norman Powell's about an 18 to 20 point per game scorer, maybe even a little bit over 20 points per game, but you got to look at it like this. He would be the best shooter on the court at all times if you have a starting lineup of Davion Mitchell, Norman Powell, Andrew Wiggins, or possibly Bobby Portis, whichever one you want to interchange. I think it'll be Andrew Wiggins.
You can make
Then
an argument that Andrew Wiggins could be the best shooter too, though.
he could be. He could be. I know that a lot of I think that I seen the stat saying that between Davion Mitchell, Norman Powell, and Andrew Wiggins, they shot above 38 or 40% last year. So they're they can make timely shots. I just need to see it more consistently because of the fact that the spacing. Bam is going to have to expand his game a lot as well. But the thing is, with having Giannis on the court takes a lot of attention off of guys like Bam. So, I would love to see how screen and roll will work with those two guys because I can see it happening. I can see that happening. I can see a lot of pick and pops, possibly with Giannis running somewhat of a point forward. I could see a lot of it. I just want to see what they're gonna have that bench looking like by the time we get to about September. What are they gonna have? Who's gonna be their sixth man? I need to see some of these things before I can like go making a bold assessment of saying that they're definitely going to be a top six seed.
If I had to take a guess today, I believe the sixth man on the team is Bobby Portis. I believe that he comes off the bench in that six man role. I don't think that he'll be in the starting rotation. Now he'll play heavy role, he'll play heavy minutes in that six man role, but I think he's going to be the first guy that comes off the bench. You talk about the point forward situation. I mean, there are lingering reports out there that there could be some type of drawing interest between the Miami Heat and a certain point forward who they had more than a decade ago. Do you buy into any of that?
Uh, I buy. I mean, I buy into it a little bit. I just, I'm just still waiting to see if that's gonna like materialize into something like legit. But I am buying into it because of who it is and what he's meant for that city. So I will buy into it for right now. Whether it gets done or not,
By the way, to our listeners, if you haven't figured it out, we're talking about LeBron James.
yeah, I think it's just it'd be crazy if they were able to do that. I'm not gonna lie, like
More so
that,
crazy for them or more so crazy that he would do it? Because Pat Riley said a couple of days ago that he would leave a shiny new key under that mat for that man if he wanted to come back.
to answer that question, both, but both because it would provide him if his goal is to still compete for a championship. This would probably be his best opportunity too, and he gets to come somewhere where it's not home, but this is one of the places that he, started his like for a lot of people, this is where he came to learn to win. He came to Miami to learn to win from with the assistance of D Wade and Chris Bosh, but this is why it's like
when
legit.
you take apart his career and say you do it in 4-year increments, I
Mhm.
don't have the numbers directly in front of me, but I believe that it would be safe to say that his 4 years in Miami, just by a 4-year stretch, if you're breaking his career down in 4-year stretches, I believe his 4-year stint in Miami is probably the highest winning percentage for a 4-year gap throughout his career.
Yeah, and I mean, just thinking about what he did there, he was a defense, probably yeah, he was actually a defensive player of the year from having a clean sweep. So, and what I'm saying, he did what in 4 years he had two MVPs, two Finals MVPs back to back, two championships back to back. So if he and Pat Riley put aside whatever they put aside, because like I said, for Pat Riley, he knows this is about business and he wants to win. And he knows that LeBron, they can help each other out. I think that this is one of those things that we can, we both can get something that we want. LeBron, we can provide you with the best opportunity to win. You still get to play with one of the, greatest players in NBA history in Giannis and a young team as well still.
So, if I may, let me jog your memory back for about 4 or 5 months when Pat Riley was having a statue unveiled, rightfully so, with the Los Angeles Lakers when the Miami Heat were on a road trip and they were playing the Lakers that night, and the Lakers chose to unveil the statue on that night. There's a video that shows LeBron James going out of his way to seek and find Pat Riley that night before the start of the game to congratulate him and embrace him on that moment. I honestly think the mainstream media has overplayed some of those things. No matter what Pat Riley has said, no matter what LeBron James has said, there's always going to be mutual respect and love between those two. Because even as angry as Pat Riley was when LeBron left, you always heard him say over the years, if he ever wants to come back, that door is more than open. Even though I'm pissed off right now, if he ever wants to come back, that door is more than open.
I mean, I think the same thing when you say about Shaq. Him and Shaq didn't see necessarily eye to eye, but there was respect there always. So I think that it was one of those things. I know about that story. It was never to the point with LeBron where he was wanting to put hands on Pat Riley. So I ain't gonna say it's the same, but it is a little bit of like, okay, I know what you did for the game. Now it's a little bit different because LeBron legit has a chance to go out on his own terms where he gets to pick his team, he gets to pick his situation, and he gets to, he's not in a rush right now. This is one of those things where he can take his time, pick the team that he feels that he has the best opportunity to win because honestly, I don't feel like it's the Lakers. I do not feel like the Lakers provide him right now with the best opportunity to win with their current roster.
I mean, I agree with you on that 100%. I do want to talk a little to the point that you just said about Shaq Pat Riley, though. I don't think it was the same, not because of the wanting to put hands on that type of ordeal. Shaq after 2005 was a totally different player for the remainder of his career. We know that. And an older Shaq is not nearly as dominant as 01, 02, 03, 04, even Orlando Shaq. If he had a younger Shaq, if he had that level of a Shaq that he was dealing with and things had ended ugly, I do believe the door still would have been open. But at the stage that Shaq was in his career, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'll give you that because I felt like he was better in Phoenix than he was in Miami, to be honest with you. I felt like he was a much better version of himself, whether that was situation, whether that was the team overall. I think that, he was not it wasn't even a 1A, 1B situation when he got to Miami. I think that Dwayne Wade was clearly the number one. Shaq was not the same player that he was in LA, which is where I'm pretty sure a lot of people, and I don't think he necessarily needed to be just because of the fact that Dwayne Wade was coming into his own at that time, and you didn't necessarily need it, but like you are right in that sense that he wasn't the same player, and it wasn't the same type of Shaq that we saw in LA or Orlando. So I will agree to that point. Um, as far as
Look,
the oh, go
well,
ahead.
go ahead, finish your point because I wanted to ask you, but I'll wait until you finish your point on what you were going to make your point on.
I was just gonna say, like, when it comes down to it, if LeBron legit wants to win another, at least not even just win, but at least compete in meaningful games in April, May, June, I think that he has to entertain it. He has to enter. You can't tell me that you can't look at this and say, "Wow, I would really love to play." Because the only other place that I could see, and this is even a worse version of what we're talking about with Miami, the idea of them. I've heard the idea of the Warriors trying to go after him and Kawhi Leonard, but I don't see that necessarily happen. I don't see that as like feasible. But I do see this as a feasible option. If LeBron is willing to take the money that they're offering, I think that he can make it happen.
Yeah, that Warrior scenario that you're talking about, we talk a lot at times when teams put older teams together in the NBA. We always give a shout out to one of our favorite sitcoms, Martin, when he talked about the Frederick Douglass All Stars. I'm gonna go a step further. If that Warriors team was to come together, KB, they would be the Nat Turner All Stars.
Yeah, hey man, KG in the Brooklyn Nets uniform, cue the music.
Like literally, like that I got to go a step further than Frederick Douglass on that one, because like you talking about LeBron going on age 42, Steph is closer to 40, Draymond is close to 40, Jimmy Butler coming off of a torn ACL, he's closer to 40. Or would they trade Jimmy Butler to the Clippers in that scenario to get Kawhi Leonard? I don't know. Kawhi Leonard's knees, they might as well be 80. I look, I don't know.
Yeah, that was as far as Jimmy Butler, that was the scenario that I did see where they were going to acquire Kawhi. It would have had to have been with Jimmy Butler being the focal point of that trade. And I think that from a fan standpoint, a lot of people just wanted to see it. They were excited to see it. They saw it in the Olympics, all these All-Star games. They were just like, we want to see it. But if you're talking about you really want to win, you could possibly rattle off a championship this year, possibly even next year, depending on how things go. But you have a legit chance to get through the East at least, because
I'm
even go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm good on these old teams. I don't care what some of these fans want to see, man. I have seen what these old teams look like, just like you have. We saw what the old Brooklyn Nets with KG and Paul Pierce and Darren Williams past his prime and Joe Johnson look like. We saw that. We
Yeah.
saw what the Lakers looked like just a couple of years ago with LeBron, AD, Westbrook, Carmelo, and Dwight Howard all on the same team.
Yeah.
I don't want to see anything like this again.
Yeah. And to be honest, like I said, a little too late for that type of scenario to happen, because it would have been a good thing if we had seen it even 5 years ago. It would have been a legit. We would have seen some beautiful basketball, if anything. But now it just kind of seems like they ain't played together all this time. Just let it go, because I really do. I do want LeBron to actually be, not struggling to get out the first round all the time when it comes to this Lakers team. And I look at it like, if he has like because right now, regardless of what he's saying, regardless of what other people are saying about Jordan and him, he's still chasing. He's still chasing because he's still chasing the championships. He has all the other accolades right now. He's still chasing that championship count, because if he gets the five, that puts him right on par with Kobe, some of the other greats, because he's not going to be content riding out this last year or two, just playing for fun, because like I said, it's never been him. He's always been one of those guys that's wanted to compete for championships.
That's true, but let me ask you this. I mean, if he's not the main focal point for that championship, does it really matter?
Depends. It depends, only because when you're talking about having the guy being 1A or 1B, like how Kyrie and him were for that 2016 championship. Like, obviously he was the 1A, but it's a different situation, because now he knows that he's not going to be the main focal point of any offense. He's going to probably fall into that third option type of category, which is fine for him because of where he is at age 42. But he can still contribute, because we saw him being an effective playmaker at age 40, age 41. So it's like, we know what he can be. I don't necessarily need him to be the focal point, because I feel like if he's the main focal point of your offense or just your team in general, you're not going to win much. Not with him at this current stage of his career. So I don't need that. I just need him to be effective. That's it.
I hear you on that. I agree with it. I wanted to ask you though, because we spent so much time talking about the Miami angle on this. Let's look at Milwaukee for a second, because I know that it's a lot of people writing them off right now. And yes, no doubt they have entered into a rebuild. But I sat and I thought about this for a couple of days, and I look at the pieces that they got in this trade. I look at the draft picks that they made, in particular in the first round on Tuesday. Braden Berry's out of Arizona, Nate Ament out of Tennessee. You got Taylor Jenkins coming in as the new head coach. So start of a new culture, everything right there. For Tyler Hero, it's a homecoming, going back to Wisconsin. And I think Khalil Ware is actually a very interesting piece in this. I was actually rooting for a scenario for the Lakers to get involved in this if it had became a 4-team trade of some sort and they end up getting Khalil Ware. I honestly think Milwaukee has a chance to be an interesting team next season, KB. Not a championship contender by any sort. Probably not even a surefire playoff team. But I believe that they're going to be better than some folks are projecting that they're going to be if they're able to stay healthy.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that now I want to ask you before I even get into this, do you do you take into account anything that has to do with that report coming out that they may be looking to ship Tyler Hero anywhere?
Yes, because if they do that, all bets are off. That
Yeah.
means that they're fully embracing a rebuild at this point. But if they keep him, I think they have a chance to make things interesting when you talk about that 6 through 10 slot in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think that was just something that I gotta wait and see because of how big of a piece he is in this whole equation. I think that if they move him and they embrace the full rebuild, now they do have a mix of they have a mix of veteran talent as well as a youth movement. So they're right where they need to be. I think because if they're trying to they moving off of an icon of the franchise to fully embrace it. Now you get to see more of the, Jaime Jaquez Jr. You get to see what he can do with a probably even more big, much bigger role than he had in Miami because of the fact that he's going to get more freedom to do what he's going to do anyways. You still have Miles Turner, who's really the vet on the team, along with some other guys like him. And then you look at, I want to honestly say that I want to see how the Khalil Ware and Miles Turner situation, because now they have two legit 7-footers that are rim protectors. Because I think with Khalil Ware, I think that you were right. I was glad to see he was included in that deal because I was like, that's a guy. If they had let him stay in Miami, that would have been scary hours for real because of the fact that he was improving year by year. So I'm glad to see that he gets to, kind of get a new start as well. But they
I
are
want
going
to
to be
see
interesting.
I want to see if they're going to try to move off Miles Turner, to be honest with you,
I
because
think they're trying to.
they signed him to that albatross of a contract, and it was a disaster last year. And you can talk about Giannis being injured for a good portion of the season and different things like that. It's just not working out.
Yeah.
Miles Turner is not the Miles Turner that he was for so many years in Indiana. And if you watch his last 2 seasons in Indiana, you kind of saw this somewhat coming.
Yeah. He started regressing towards the end of his tenure in Indiana. Like we all saw the finals. We saw his inability to rebound the ball. That was always my issue with him, is his inability to rebound high numbers. Now we know him as a shot blocker. We know him as a legit 3-point shooter that can stretch the floor. But I think that they kind of put their foot in the mouth when they signed him to that terrible deal because that was now that we can go back and look on that deal, I think that was the worst, one of the worst deals, if not top two worst deals of the offseason. I think that might have been the worst deal. Just because now I feel like they now that they have Khalil Ware, they really wish that they didn't have to deal with that contract at all. I think that they wish that they hadn't done it in the first place, to be honest with you, because they didn't know that he was going to be this atrocious.
And can they honestly find somebody that's willing to take that contract?
I don't. I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no, just because of who Miles Turner has become. I don't think so. I think that his value is as low as it's ever been. I think that, if you're willing to if you can find a trade partner, good luck because I just don't see it out there. for the value that he would bring, I don't, because you can get a guy out of college that can pretty much do what Miles Turner does right now. And that's the problem, is because we can get a guy out of college for cheaper and not have to pay the tax of whatever we're paying Miles Turner. So yeah, I'm not sure that they can move off of him right now. I think they just have to ride it out and hope that his play improves and that somebody willing to, take a waiver out on him.
Now, I have no doubt that if the Milwaukee Bucks come out to an awful start next year, they are going to start to try to move off of some of these pieces to try to properly get their rebuild started if they do want to start completely all the way over with that. But Taylor Jenkins is a good coach. Like, you saw that what he was able to do in Memphis. And that whole situation is wild in itself to me, how just 4 seasons ago, that was arguably the best young core in the NBA, or at least one of them. And now the only piece that remains there is Ja Morant. And it's because I don't believe they can move his contract.
That's crazy. And I keep going back to that picture that Ja Morant posted with him, LaMelo, Trey Young, and legit now we have two of the three moved to different teams, starting new chapters. And like you said, I think that as far as when we're talking about value, I think Ja Morant's value is at all-time low because of the fact of, injuries or whether there's been antics, antics off the court, whatever. He's had different issues. So, I do believe in Taylor Jenkins. I do. I've always thought he was a great coach. I've always thought he was a great coach. I've always thought he was a tough coach. So he he embodied everything it meant. And that was also a reason I felt like that some of Ja Morant's feelings towards the Grizzlies organization have soured a little bit because of the fact that he was very upset. He was very vocal about being upset when Taylor Jenkins was fired. So I think that all of that played a part into, Ja not wanting to be in Memphis. I think that he's okay with a new start, but the problem is he doesn't have leverage, and neither do the Grizzlies. None of them have leverage in this situation.
I'm gonna say this: if you're so bad leverage wise to the point that the Sacramento Kings don't want you, we got a problem.
But can you blame them though? Because we'll talk about it later. But you ended up with the point guard that you wanted.
Yeah, sadly they did.
Yeah, and we're saying sadly because of the point guard, not because of the Kings. Sadly because of the point guard. I wish it was.
Oh no, I'm saying sadly because of the Kings, and I mean it in terms of I'm sad for him that he has to try to go to that situation and try to save that dumpster fire of an organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when it comes to Ja Morant, do I think he can help a couple of teams out? Possibly. But I think that Ja's game has pretty much stayed the same, been consistently the same for the past 3 to 4 years. I don't think that he hasn't improved in any. He still's not a knockdown outside shooter, which is the one thing that we said that he needed to work on was to be a legit threat from the outside. Like slashing to the rim is cool, dunking on folks is cool, but when those injuries start to pile up, you got to figure out a different way to attack the offense. Attack the defense. And I don't think that he's ever really improved on anything since when he was on 2022 was his best year to me when he was a legit all-star. You could make it he was such an effective player because he was effective at the skill set that he had. Being athletic, the league hadn't really figured him out, but once the league started catching on to how he plays, he wasn't getting the same looks. The driving lanes were getting clogged up because he wanted to dunk over everybody. And once they said, we're not gonna let you do that, and you're gonna hurt yourself a lot more than we're gonna let you, just go in, drive on to the lane and dunk on 7-footers. No, you gotta legit learn how to play basketball. So I don't know what's Ja Morant's future looking like right now.
I don't know what it is either, but the most bizarre thing in all of this to me is that this has to be like the first Nike signature shoe guy that we saw really kind of have a bit of a fall off during what should be towards him heading towards the prime of his career. It's honestly really unfortunate. Well, the Dallas Mavericks, they made a move earlier this week, too. Honestly, it was on the same day that the Giannis trade happened, just about 12 hours beforehand. They have a new head coach, Dusty May. That's right. The same Dusty May who was just the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines men's basketball program, winning a national championship just a couple of months ago. He is now taking his talents to the NBA to be the Dallas Mavericks head coach. And this is how you do it. This is how you do it, KB. When you're going to make a move like this, you don't make any announcements about the possibilities of it until it actually happens. We heard about the possibilities of a John Shire move. I thought that it was going to be really like insane for them to be able to move him on from a brand like Duke that's so prestigious and means what it does to college basketball. But I say this is how you do it because remember 2 years ago, the Lakers were trying to hire Dan Hurley potentially as their head coach before they ended up settling for JJ Redick. And I said settling because Dan Hurley ended up turning them down. We heard about Dan Hurley as there were contract negotiations getting ready to happen and as things were happening. We didn't hear anything about Dusty May going to Dallas until this deal was signed, sealed, and delivered. That's how you do it, folks.
Yeah, and a great signing, guy just coming off a national championship win. I think that, with the mix of young talent that they have, the Derek Lively, the Cooper Flag, I think that, even with him drafting one of his guys in the first round, I think that it's very important for what they're doing because, like I said, you got these guys that are, within 5 years of their NBA careers, as far as like guys like Derek Lively. You got Cooper Flag entering his second year. The reins have completely been turned over to him. Who knows what's going to happen with the Kyrie Irving situation? But what I say is you got a guy who I felt like was, coming into his own, who's also been a great college coach. You got a Cooper Flag, a guy who looks like he could possibly be a future MVP, a future All Star, future All NBA guy. So you have a mix of young talent on this team, and you just needed the right guy to lead the charge. So I do think this was the right hiring, but like you said, I think that the way they went about the hiring was very important. It was no rumors, it was no, media circus like it was with the Dan Hurley situation. It was legit. We're gonna keep this under wraps and we're gonna announce it when we're ready to. And they announced it before the draft. Now he gets to go put his basically his blueprint of what this team needs to look like in the next few years together. I think that he's going to command respect coming in out the gate because of the fact that a lot of these guys aren't that they've only been professionals for maybe a couple of years. You got guys that are going to be looking to him for a lot of guidance, and then like I said, especially with the guys that has played for him or played against him, they know that there's a certain level of of preparedness that they're going to have to be when it comes to being coached by this guy. So I think that this is a great hiring. And I can't say that about too many college coaches, but I think this is going to be a great hiring for them.
And I honestly was really intrigued to see what Dallas was going to do in the draft after this signing was announced because he's either coached all of those guys, recruited most of, if not all of those guys. And Masai Ujiri is a guru when it comes down to the draft himself anyway. So that now being a two-man tandem there, I'm excited for the future of the Dallas Mavericks. Y'all can please finally move on from the Luka stuff, Nico, all that. Y'all can move on from that now. A new chapter is loading, and I think it's a prosperous one in the future.
Yeah. And I think that also this is going to be a learning curve for all of them, actually, because with him coming to the NBA, I think that it's going to be a lot of things that he, was accustomed in college, he's going to have to get used to as well. But I think because he has such a young team, they're going to be able to grow together. And that's going to be the good thing about what they have because, you have a few vets on the team, don't get me wrong, but the main focal point of your team is Cooper Flag. And if you can get him on board with whatever you're doing, I feel like they're going to have some success. I think going into next season, they could be a sneaky team to watch out for in that play-in type of situation because I'm not gonna say what they're gonna be yet because like I said, I don't know what's gonna happen with this Kyrie situation. I just don't know yet. But like I said, they handed the reins. This is Cooper Flag's team without a doubt. So, like I said, if your star player buys into your program, I think that the sky's the limit for whatever you want to do, whether that be to play in or if you can, if your aspirations are a little higher, we'll see. But I think the play in is where they need to shoot for right now as a young team after, basically finishing the way they did last season. And you got guys like Klay Thompson on the team that still, have some veteran. Oh, I'm sorry, he's not signed currently.
No. He's still on the team, but the reason I'm shaking my head right now is because I don't think he's going to be there.
Yeah, fair point, fair point. I was looking at it for like the leadership as far as like veteran leadership, just to be on like a mentorship role. But
Maybe he stays there if they can restructure his contract. Maybe.
yeah, yeah, because I don't know what his market would be right now either. I'm gonna be honest. So I
I want to
think
say
they,
this. I want to say this about the Kyrie point that you said though, because
mhm.
you know that I've been stuck for months on this point that man Dallas is going to end up waiving this dude and he's going to become a free agent and he'll go wherever. I no longer think that. I think that he'll start the year with them, and depending on how things are going throughout the course of the opening months, I think that will determine his future in Dallas.
Now also not necessarily in the Kyrie point, but do you think that Cooper Flag stays at the point guard role, like how Jason Kidd had him prior to his departure?
I don't think so. Not with Kyrie being there because that's an actual floor general.
Sure. That's fair. That's fair. I just had to ask because I know that was Jason Kidd's vision for him, but I don't think that's Desi May's vision for him. And I think that, like you said, with Kyrie being there, it's not really a necessity for him to bring the ball up and be a point forward. I think he can still play that point forward role at times, but I don't think it's a necessity at this point when Kyrie comes back into the fold.
And when I say that they have a bright future ahead of them, I agree with you on the play-in stuff, but they're not going to be anywhere of a contender status for at least, I'm going to say 2 to 3 seasons. A lot can happen in 2 seasons. It can't happen in one like that, though, necessarily. They'll be interesting to watch for sure. Let's get to some quick hitters. And you bring up point guards and floor generals. Well, here is one that is on the move, and that would be LaMelo Ball. We heard earlier this week that trade rumors were starting out of Charlotte. Honestly, didn't really start to hear that until Wednesday. And by Thursday morning, he was gone, KB. They shipped him off to Minnesota. He is the newest teammate for Anthony Edwards. And you can say that Minnesota had a plan when they made a move like this. To me, it somewhat feels like a bit of a panic move. I don't know where you are on this, but the reason I say that is because it feels like they're trying to do something to try to appease Anthony Edwards and what he wants to accomplish in Minnesota. So they're just trying to make some type of move, and this is a splashy move, no doubt about it. Let's go ahead and read the details of the trade here for everybody who may not necessarily know what Charlotte's going to be getting in return. So it's LaMelo Ball and Josh Green to the Minnesota Timberwolves for Naz Reid and a series of draft picks. I like Naz Reid going to Charlotte. It makes them a more well-rounded basketball team. And I'm not necessarily against LaMelo going to Minnesota, but what I will say to everybody, and this is why I don't understand all the outrage I'm seeing from fans in Charlotte off of videos I'm seeing on social media. He's never played winning basketball in the NBA. He never won anything in Charlotte. He's a one-time All-Star. He's never made an All-NBA team. It feels more like a risky move for Minnesota to me to try to appease Anthony Edwards. This is something that could go along the lines of you talk about successful duos over the past few years. Could this end up being Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown? Possibly. Or could this end up being closer to Giannis Antetokounmpo, Damian Lillard? Possibly that as well. Now, I'm not comparing play styles necessarily. I'm just saying star for star. And I'm going to be honest with you, KB. I don't necessarily see this as a long term fit in Minnesota. I think that they're not going to be able to do too much significantly. And I think within 2 to 3 years, Anthony Edwards is going to be looking for a new home.
I ain't gonna lie, I thought the same thing when I had seen this move. It wasn't really one that moved me. It was kind of like wow, because I, wasn't expecting it today at that time when the trade was finalized. But it was kind of like a wow. But it did feel like that this was a move that they were doing just to kind of appease Anthony Edwards because you're hearing all the reports coming out about he's been frustrated since Karl Anthony Towns was dealt. And now that you just dealt Julius Randle in a separate deal, it's kind of like what are we going to do? We're panicking. We need something to keep this guy engaged and keep this guy wanting to still be a Minnesota Timberwolf.
Do you think he was that upset about the Julius Randle move, though, in
No, no, no,
particular?
no, 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 no. I think that their play styles didn't play off each other well. I think that him and Cat were more of an ideal fit. Him and Julius Randle were like water and oil to me because of and it was more on the Julius Randle side of things than the Cat, because Cat is on his worst day, he's still a much better player than Julius Randle. And I think that what Edwards needs, he doesn't need people to clog the paint because that gives him more room to operate. And being able to kick it out to a stretch 4 or 5, that helps his game a lot more because he saw more doubles this past season than he probably has before when Cat was there, because of the fact that Julius Randle's not you could say that he was an improving player, in his first season with New York, but he was not that type of player to, demand the type of like money, the contracts, or anything that he was getting. I never saw Julius Randle as that type of player. Julius Randle was never a one. I didn't even think he was the number 2 on that team. I really didn't, because he disappeared in a lot of key moments. So I think that he was more legitimately mad about the Karl-Anthony Towns situation than the Julius Randle situation. This situation to me is going to be interesting to see because of the fact that Naz Reid was set to be their starting power forward, and now he's no longer in the fold. So now you're possibly running out who at that power forward position, because Naz Reid was at his worst, he was a bucket. So he could go get his own shot, which now you don't have that in that front court anymore.
And I'm gonna tell you another reason why this somewhat feels more like a panic move to me. They just re-signed Ayo Dosunmu to a big contract.
And I heard somebody say if they could go rip that contract up right now, they would go rip it up right now, because that money could have been allocated somewhere else. Because I like Ayo. I think Ayo is a great player. I think he's a legit defender. He showed me a lot in his playoff run last season. So I like Ayo. I don't like Ayo for that type of money though. I think that contract was outrageous. Um, and I think that was prior to them even thinking that, LaMelo Ball was on the market. I just think that if they had the chance to do it over again, I don't think they make that deal. I don't.
So what do you do with this? What do you do with these 3 players? Do you put Io at the 1, LaMelo at the 2, or do you flip them because LaMelo does have playmaking ability? Do you put him at the 1, Io at the 2, and play Ant at the 3 as a somewhat undersized small forward?
That's the dilemma that Chris Finch is going to have, because of the fact that if LaMelo is at the 2, it's going to be where he's going to get attacked. He's going to get attacked. And I think that if you have Anthony Edwards at the 3, he's going to be so undersized that a lot of the bigger power forwards, bigger small forwards, i.e., like a Kawhi Leonard when he is healthy, i.e., even at times at the Miami Heat lineup, Giannis at the small forward, if not the power forward. He's going to get put into some situations where he's going to be severely undersized, and he's going to have to rely on his grit to actually help him out, because I don't know what to make of this team right now. Like I said, this is one of those situations. They gave up a lot to get LaMelo over here as far as draft capital. Now, could Josh Green possibly help out, who's another pretty good defender? Possibly. But it's going to be too much. I think that their backcourt is severely undersized as far as Io, and then you have LaMelo, who's undersized, as not as far as height, but as far as like frame wise, because he's going to go against 2 guards that are going to attack him as far as post ups. So it's going to be interesting to see how he's going to play chess with these pieces that he has. I think that, like you said, this was just a appeasement move right here.
And how do you know that those draft picks that they ended up getting in return don't start to feel like the draft picks from the Brooklyn Nets Boston Celtics trade from 2013 that saw Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce and what was left of their basketball careers head over to Brooklyn, and Brooklyn gave up a bunch of draft picks that would become 2 of them at least, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who I'm sure that if they could do that all over again, they actually would do that.
Mm-hmm.
These picks that Minnesota gave up here in exchange for this deal, they're for much further down the line. 2028, 2031, 2033. You don't know if any of these players are going to be on this team or the state that this team's going to be in around that time period.
And when this deal was made, if you ask me, I'm much more optimistic on the Charlotte side than I was on the Minnesota side because they're building something. They're building something. Coach Lee's out there building something. And if you look at what they did, they have some good ball players on that team. Now, when you talk about Brandon Miller, he became more of a offensive threat. You know, you still have Miles Bridges, Nipple. I think he's only going to get better. And then now you have Kobe White stepping into that possibly that starting point guard role. I think that they're going to be legit. I think that they're going to be legit. Like I think that they're going to right the wrongs that they did, last season. But they went on a run. I think this is something that now they're going to start being able to sustain something because one thing that Kobe White does, Kobe White is an effective shooter. He can run an offense. He can. We've seen him do it in Chicago. Now he's going to get a chance to do it in Charlotte. And I think that Nas Reed is going to help them out tremendously because he gives them something that they needed at that position. So I'm looking at Charlotte like this is the exact move they needed to make because you weren't going to go very far with LaMelo anyways. So at that point, you might as well go ahead, reset. And it's funny that we talked about it, but it's funny from the Minnesota side. The 2020 draft class, you ended up with two out of the top three picks, and
And
you
that's the
still
part
have
in this that I don't think that anybody really is paying enough attention to. Because I heard someone say earlier today, well, Anthony Edwards, he's a veteran in this league now. LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards were drafted in the same exact draft class.
legit, legit. And it's like you ended up with two of the three top picks in that class, and yet you still really, to me, have no direction right now. I
We
don't,
talked
I
about how
don't
they're
think
suffering for bigs right now. Maybe they make a call to James Wiseman and they fill out the trifecta effect.
Look. Yeah, don't even do that. Don't even do that. I know Golden State fans get PTSD talking about James Wiseman.
I'm being legit right now. Also, one thing I also want to mention about Charlotte too, they drafted Haynes Steinbeck with the number 14 pick in the draft on Tuesday too, and that's somebody who's a true floor general. I don't know if he's going to get starting minutes over Kobe White, at least not right now, but he should be an effective player coming off the bench at least.
Yeah, I see him being a good player coming off the bench, but I think Kobe White is just because you need that veteran presence on the floor, at least in the starting lineup, that'll give him more flexibility to grow and learn from Kobe, and then being able to come in that second unit and get to play more free, with that second unit than opposed to playing in that starting lineup. So I think that he will be effective just in that backup role as opposed to starting.
Well, we talked about Julius Randle being traded. That happened hours before the Giannis trade on Monday, too. He is now a Brooklyn Net. And as much as I would like to say life comes at you fast, how you can go from a winning situation to a dormant situation, I do have to remind myself that Julius Randle was the player that helped get the New York Knicks resurgence going in the 2021 season. I have to remind myself of that. So, like, if you put the right pieces around him, could they build something interesting in Brooklyn? Drafting Michael Brown Jr. out of Louisville with the number 7 pick, getting another good draft pick later on in the draft. We'll see.
Yeah, that Michael Brown pick was amazing. I thought when they snuck up and got him, I said, if you watched any Louisville basketball this year, you saw how important Michael Brown was to that team. Like, legit did not look the exact same team when he was not on the floor. But I am curious how it's going to work with you integrating Michael Brown into the fold. Now you have Julius Randle and Michael Porter. How is that going to work? I like the fit is just funky to me right now. I'm trying to picture it all together, but it's just a funky fit right now. I don't think that I'm optimistic for it, but I'm not like too high on that either. I think it's just gonna be more about what Julius Randle can help the younger guys with because you got a lot of rookies. I'm saying you have a lot of second year players on that team that were just drafted last year. So I don't know. I don't know.
I I don't think Michael Porter Jr. is long for Brooklyn. I don't know where he ends up, but I don't think he's long to remain there for the long term.
I would hope not, just because of the fact that his services can be used for a lot of contending teams. I know Detroit could have used them. I know it was a couple of teams that could have used a legit shooter, and so hey. I would hope that he's not too long for Brooklyn because I would rather just see them go ahead and do full rebuild and just go ahead and get it over with and trust the young guys to kind of figure it out and then play the free agency game later on down the line when they have like, a more loaded class of free agents coming out.
I wouldn't mind seeing him putting on the purple and gold for my Lakers either, but they got their offseason started this week as well, signing Austin Reaves to a max deal. Now, it should be noted that this deal does not affect them against the cap this offseason. So they still have room to go out and make the other moves that they need to make to fill out this roster successfully around their new duo of Doncic and Reaves. I honestly don't know if LeBron comes back into the fold for this. And to be honest with you, KB, no disrespect to LeBron, I'm not really too concerned about it. I think this team needs to move forward in a future direction. I like the draft selection of Cam Carr on Tuesday night that we saw. That should give them some speed and some playmaking coming off the bench. But bringing back LeBron, it just kind of slows down the pace to me. This was the oldest pace team in the league last season. You're not going to win championships or be in the conversation for that if you're playing that style of basketball. But as much as I would have liked to have seen what else they could have done in free agency besides just bringing back Austin Reaves as the most important move, I do have to say that I'm glad they didn't lose him for nothing.
Yeah, I think that what you said is very about LeBron is very important. I think that it is important that you start preparing for the life after LeBron James. I think that when it comes to him, you can't base all your moves around a 40, but soon to be 42-year-old guy. Like you can't base all of your moves around a guy who's in the twilight years of his career. So if you were looking for a legit co-star for Luka, I mean, you had one in house, and like you said, you didn't want to just lose him for nothing. And now you can start kind of like seeing like what they can be because a lot of those guys on that roster from last year don't need to be on the roster this year. I think that we both can agree on that. I think that they got some tough decisions to make, but some of those guys, man, I look at it like Luca and AR can be effective together. I think that it's just about building out the rest of that roster. So Rob Pelinka got to get on his job, man. We got to see something other than what we saw because I don't know if I can take any more seeing DeAndre Ayton drop the ball, seeing Luke Kennard have flashes of good moments and then go back to doing nothing. I just can't see that anymore.
DeAndre Ayton will not be back in the purple and gold, so I'm
Thank
not worried about
God.
him.
Thank God, man. I just I remember we were talking about it, and I was just like, I never saw that as a good fit. But I think it was just the fact that their team construction is such a mess that was the reason why they didn't have success. I think that if they had constructed that team just a little bit better, I think that they would have possibly they could have actually made that OKC series. I don't think they could have beat OKC. I think they just could have made it more competitive. But it's certain guys that I don't think they have a legit dog on that team right now. And that's my issue with the Lakers right now. I think that they need a scrappy guy like even when I saw that, Isaiah Stewart went for 3 second round picks. While he's not the biggest guy out there, but the way he plays, I think
He's
the
going to
Lakers
bring some toughness.
yeah, and I think the Lakers could have used that. I think the Lakers could have used more shooting. I think that these are things that are like key details in building a championship roster, and I think that's the reason why the Lakers ended up their fate was pretty much sealed last postseason because of the fact that there were too many holes in this team to cover up. That was pretty much my only issue with them.
A little breaking news out of the WNBA. Martina Mabrey from the Tempo, Marina Mabrey, excuse me, from the Tempo, tying the WNBA single game scoring record with 53 points against the Los Angeles Sparks. Congratulations to her.
And that happened tonight.
Yes.
Wow, wow! Congratulations to her. That's what you call getting a bucket. That's legit. That's history.
Well, the Portland Trailblazers finally announced the hiring of their new head coach, Micah Nori, an assistant with the Minnesota Timberwolves. But this move did not make many from the Coaching Players Association very happy, starting with JB Bickerstaff, because he only got one guaranteed year on this deal. I have said this once, I have said this twice, and I will continue to say it until I am proven wrong. This new Portland Trailblazers owner, Tom Dundon, and I do understand that he also is the owner of the Carolina Hurricanes, who just won the Stanley Cup for the second time in their franchise history, the first time since 2006. When it comes down to being an NBA owner, however, right now it is hard to say anything besides this man does not know what he's doing. There also was a report that came out today, KB, that he would like for the city and taxpayers to pay for the entire $600 million plus renovations to the Moda Center.
That's legit. That's a real report.
Yes, that is a real report.
Oh yeah, he's out of his mind. It's not even that I have a problem with this head coach hiring. I just, I'm showing so much loyalty and love to Tiago Splitter because we both agreed that we felt like he did enough to, warrant him being signed to be the head coach of this team, going forward. But, Chicago got him a good one. So, I'm looking forward to see what Coach Moore is going to do. I'm optimistic about what this team is going to be with Dame Lillard coming back. Denny Avdia continuing to progress and excel. What Scoot Henderson is going to look like, whether Rob Williams is going to be on the team or not going to next season, which I don't think he will be. But, I think that Portland, yeah, with ownership, they could be so much better. I think that they, have kind of messed things up in a sense because yeah, what you just said to me is crazy. I didn't even know that, but that sounds insane that you're asking people to help pay for that. That is crazy.
And we'll close off the quick hitters by going into some soccer for you with the World Cup. Messi making history, becoming the World Cup's all-time leading goal scorer earlier this week. He's the GOAT. Nothing else to be said.
Yeah, I was going to say he's the best player I've ever seen in my lifetime as well. Like to be doing it as long as he's been doing it, I do want to see the match. I do want to see the match. I know that he's dismissed these questions, but I do want to see. I want to see Ronaldo and Messi in the World Cup final. I do. I think that would do so much for the sport in itself. Put so many eyes on the sport that because regardless if you are a fan of soccer or football, for some people, everybody knows certain names that are synonymous with the sport. You know the Mbappes of the world, you know the Neymars, you know the Messis, you know the Cristiano Ronaldos. But for the fans that are not so, for the non-mainstream fans, the fans that are legit, everybody knows Messi. Everybody knows what he's accomplished in this sport. For a lot of people, he's the greatest. He's my GOAT when it comes to the sport because I've never seen a guy get it done for this long and how he's done it. So yeah, my hat's off to him. Like I said, witness history. But I'm gonna tell you though, and it's not taking anything away from him. He got a young goat coming up right behind him because
I was just
Mbappe
about
is
to
right
say
on
that.
his tail.
I was
He's
just
right
about to
there.
say that.
Yeah, he is right there.
Yeah, I was about to say if we're watching anybody right now in the game that has a chance to surpass him or come close to him, it's Mbappe.
Absolutely. Like, if you didn't get a chance to see them square off in the World Cup final a couple of years ago, you missed the treat. That was one of the best games I've ever seen. So,
Well, that's going to wrap up part one of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. But stay tuned, y'all. We're coming right back with part two. We got to talk about the NBA draft. We also got to talk about this Jaylen Brown stuff more in depth of what's happening in Boston. X and KB coming at you. We'll be right back.